to start us off tonight, I would love to have Elsie help orient us a little bit. So wondering if you could help orient us a little bit to how folks can support LGBTQ affirming comprehensive sex ed, sort of like what is this law that recently was passed?
Yeah, so SB Senate Bill 5395 is the Comprehensive Sex Ed Bill that was passed earlier this year, before COVID. It feels like forever ago, but the legislature at the state level passed a mandatory comprehensive sexual health education for all public school districts to provide. So like you mentioned, it is supposed to be inclusive of all LGBTQ students. The exact bill language is saying to be inclusive of students regardless of their protected class status, which includes gender and sexual orientation, but it's also nice to remember that it does include race, religion, and disability status as well. So it really is inclusive on all of the levels. And the bill works to make sure that learning targets are met around sexual health, including, sections of self-identity, which can include respecting folks' different self-identities, understanding the influences on how society, familial, and individual levels are influencing our gender and sexual orientations, and then also explaining what different gender and sexual orientations are. So that's a little bit about the bill and how it's specifically inclusive of LGBTQ students.
Great. And then could you speak just a little bit to what does it mean when we talk about comprehensive sex ed? We saw a poll question with some examples, but could you share more about what that means?
Yeah, so in the bill, it defines comprehensive sexual health education as reoccurring instruction. So not just something that you get, randomly in maybe middle school or randomly maybe in high school, but it's a reoccurring instruction that includes human development and reproduction, as well as prevention. And it's medically accurate, it's age appropriate, and it's inclusive of all of those different protected classes that I mentioned. And something that's really exciting about this bill specifically is that it includes affirmative consent and bystander intervention, which to me really rounds out the comprehensive nature of this bill.
That's great. Thanks for helping clarify that. I know that comprehensive doesn't always explain that fully to us, so thank you for really clarifying that. I know that there's been a lot of sort of misinformation, especially if you look at social media and some community gatherings about what the law does. Do you want to dispel any myths or kind of speak to any worries that folks might have about the legislation, about the law?
Yeah, there have definitely been a lot of myths put out there, especially on social media, but I just like to remind folks that this bill does outline age-appropriate comprehensive sexual education. So in K through third grade, our students will be learning social emotional learning skills, so no sexuality content or anything like that. And then, everything from there on, the K through 5 is your typical puberty lessons that I know I got as a 4th and 5th grader. And then in middle school and high school, it's age-appropriate human development and reproduction. So I'm sure, Shannon isn't teaching the 6th graders the same thing as she's teaching her 8th graders. And she'll, I'm sure, talk more about that. But really do like to dispel that myth. The other two that come to mind is that there is no one curriculum that is being mandated. It's a set of learning standards that OSPI has set forth, and then there are a variety of curriculum and instructional material that can fit those learning standards that OSPI leaves for everyone. So it's up to the individual school district in charge to review and adopt curriculum that they think fits their community best. And then parental choice is still an option. So parental choice is actually affirmed and put better into the bill. I think it fully outlines that parents have the right to opt their children out of this instruction, and it makes it so that school districts must obey the parent's choice in that.
Great, and we did just get our first Q&A. Somebody's wondering if this bill will be in effect only in public schools or all schools in Washington State. Are you able to speak to that?
That is a great question. It is all public school districts. So if they are a public school, charter schools also we've found to fall under that, but all public schools. So if you're a private school, you don't have to follow it.
Okay, so that's great information. So yeah, we'll be in place, and then it's supposed to be. When is this law taking effect?
It's also a great question. So for this school year, school districts that are already providing comprehensive sex ed, which is around 60-ish% of school districts across the state, just need to make sure that they are adding the consent, affirmative consent and bystander intervention training. And then next school year, for the 2021 school year, the 6th through high school, all school districts must implement and adopt a curriculum. And then they have until the 2022 school year to adopt any curriculum for that elementary school age.
Great, okay, well thanks. And just to mention, Elsie mentioned the OSPI, which is the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. So if you do search for that on the internet, you can find it. There's lots of great information posted on the OSPI website. And then last, Elsie, I'm curious, so now can you help orient us to what R-90 is and how Referendum 90 fits into this discussion?
Yeah, so Referendum 90 is because the Senate bill was passed earlier in March in Washington, with enough signatures gathered, citizens can refer a bill passed by the legislature to our individual ballots in November for all Washington voters to vote on. So a good example of this happening in previous years was in 2012, the same-sex marriage bill was passed by the legislature and then was referred to the Washington voters, and we voted to affirm that bill. We voted to approve that bill, and same-sex marriage was legalized in 2012 at the state level. So we want to be working to approve Referendum 90 in order to approve the legislation that was passed and approve comprehensive sex ed for all of our public schools.